Live from WSAV in high definition, you're watching News 3 on your side at 6.
Hello, Fort Stewart.
Thousands of soldiers, veterans, and their families witnessed President Obama sign executive orders today that aims to give service members, past and present, a no-hassle path to higher education. Good evening. I'm Tina Tice-Shaw.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight. Well, the higher education is the clearest path to the middle class. The president's words today as he addressed soldiers at Fort Stewart.
Here's a look now as Air Force One arriving at Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah just before 11 this morning. Once the plane touched down, it wasn't long before the President and First Lady stepped out to beautiful weather, making their way down the stairs. They received a warm welcome from military officials at Hunter. 100 soldiers also welcomed the Commander-in-Chief. After handshaking, signing autographs, and a few pictures, the President boarded Marine One helicopter for that short trip to Fort Stewart. The President and First Lady receiving a hero's welcome from our military men, women, and their families at Fort Stewart today. Then it was on to the official business of the day, introducing and signing an executive order that will protect the military and veterans from colleges that take advantage of them.
They're trying to swindle and hoodwink you. And today here at Fort Stewart, we're going to put an end to it.
3 on Your Side military reporter Alice Massimi was at Fort Stewart and has more on that executive order and protections it promises. Alice?
Well, Tina and Russ, strong language from the president today as he announced Executive Order 1307. President Obama says he realized there was a need for the White House to take a strong stance after he heard stories of one college recruiting Marines with traumatic brain injury at Camp Lejeune, something he called appalling and disgraceful.
And today here at Fort Stewart, we're going to put an end to it. We're putting an end to it.
President Barack Obama is fighting for those who fight for us, signing an executive order Friday that will protect active duty military, their families, and veterans from colleges who have histories of deception.
They'll say you don't have to pay a dime for your degree, but once you register, they'll suddenly make you sign up for a high-interest student loan. They'll say that if you transfer schools, you can transfer credits, but when you actually try to do that, you suddenly find out that you can't.
Problems the president feels no one who has served their country should be faced with. Sergeant Johnny Marshall is a case in point. A member of the 3rd Infantry Division, he enrolled in college with high hopes that were quickly dashed.
The college that I enrolled in, I couldn't open the classes online, so I called. They finally returned my phone call. I said hello, and they said, yes, it's Nettie Marshall.
The unnamed college didn't even care about Marshall's issues, just the bottom line, enrolling another student. Pamela King, the education officer at Fort Stewart and Hunter Army Airfield, says the list of problems goes on and on.
Was telling me that while she was counseling the soldier, that he got 5 phone calls for a for-profit college. She couldn't even counsel him on his education benefits because he was being harassed.
King is excited about the president's executive order.
Something needs to be done to prevent this taking advantage of folks who really don't know.
I feel like it is very important because there's so many colleges that are out there just to receive the veterans' money, not to help them progress in life.
Well, there are several aspects of the new executive order. The most notable, a requirement for colleges to provide prospective students with a fact sheet called Know Before You Owe. They're also going to require schools to set up their support for veterans.
Well, no one wants to see our veterans get ripped off. This also seems like it is one way that the president is trying to target military families during a re-election year.
That's right. He is, Russ, and also the First Lady, too, has been doing a lot to help that effort. She's got her Joining Forces program, which is targeting the families and the soldiers, helping them get employed, also helping spouses get employed, because there really are a lot of issues facing our military, especially now that the deployment pace is slowing down, so that I think now the nation can spend a little bit more time helping them get readjusted to civilian life or be more marketable in jobs outside of the military.
Well, Alice, it's not every day, of course, that we get to see the president here in the Coastal Empire. And as a journalist, what was the experience like?
It was an amazing experience, and I told people whether you support this president and his policies or not, it's still an opportunity to see a United States president, one of the most powerful men in the entire world, pretty up close and personal. We also got to see the First Lady, who is absolutely beautiful, and we were saying very statuesque. So it was a great experience to be there today.
All right, thank you, Ellis. Well, the president says the executive order will protect veterans and current service members from misleading and deceptive recruiting programs by some for-profit colleges. He says some of the schools aggressively target military members for the GI Bill money, and it seems to be working. History did some digging, and we found that for-profit schools received 37% of GI Bill money in the 2009-2010 school years. However, only educated 25% of veterans. On the flip side, public colleges enrolled 59% of veterans, but that only accounted for 40% of government money. Well, Savannah State University, which is not a for-profit school, has recently hired a full-time person to assist veteran students with the transition into college. SSU also offers disability services and counseling to help guide them through the process.
So I understand, that it might not be a smooth transition for some of the veterans coming back. So we have services in place. And I think the key is having support for them, letting them know that you're here to guide them through that process, and and you don't just have your hand out wanting the benefits of them being a military personnel.
And that's what the president says. Some schools are only interested in the money. The Student Veterans of America organization is designed to help veterans return from the war and transition into the battlefield to the classroom. It's a peer-to-peer network group that gives charters to colleges and universities. Now, more than 400 schools across the country were registered with the nonprofit group, including some here in Savannah. That is until yesterday. The Student Veterans of America revoked the charters of 26 schools, including one to South University's Savannah campus off of Mall Boulevard. In an annual review, the coalition found that instead of listing numbers for students, group leaders, chapters listed numbers for school recruiters, registration, and even the admissions department. News 3's Meredith Lay did some digging, and she joins us now with more on this story. Meredith?
That's right, Tina. You might be thinking, what's the big deal? But today I spoke with the executive director of SVA, and he says this is much more than just putting down the wrong contact information. It could be misleading veterans and misrepresenting the schools, making the colleges appear more veteran friendly, and when really they're just looking for students with the GI Bill. But the SVA group at South University says it's not like that at all, and they stand up for veterans. This is all just a misunderstanding.
I like being involved in my community.
As a former Marine, it was important for Joshua Holmes to have a sense of camaraderie when continuing his education, but he was having a hard time finding the resources he needed.
I didn't know where the VA was. I had to go find it and figure out where the American Legion or the VFW was, things that all veterans should know. I had to find out all on my own, and now that's things that we can do for veterans when they come here as a new student.
So when he received an email from the university's dean wanting to start an SVA chapter, he was all in. They had their first meeting in October of 2011.
I don't know anybody in Savannah. Having somebody around that knows the information that I learned all on my own to give me that information here on campus would have been great.
Student Veterans of America's executive director Michael Dakduke says that's the whole point, but some schools are doing it all wrong. A review of the contact information raised some red flags.
The concern is if a student veteran that's transitioning from Afghanistan, hoping to connect with a fellow veteran on a specific college campus, but instead connects with the director of admissions or recruiting officer at a school, then it makes it appear that we are working with or approving certain academic programs.
Dakduke says some schools are trying to make big bucks on our veterans and using SVA as a tool to bring them in.
It is no secret that the post-9/11 GI Bill is a very lucrative benefit, and colleges and universities are competing for military veterans to get them to the halls of their college campus, and they're competing for those dollars as well.
While they might have had their charter revoked, he says they'll continue the mission of SVA, veterans serving veterans.
Until we get it fixed, we're still going to do it.
There are steps colleges and universities can take to have their charters reinstated, which South University plans to take. There are more than 40 veterans active in South's local SVA group.
Well, one of the most touching moments of the president's time here today, a trip to Warriors Walk.
And Michelle and I just had a few moments at the Warriors Walk, paying tribute to 441 of your fallen comrades, men and women who gave their last full measure of devotion to keep our nation safe. And we will remember them. We will honor them, always. And our thoughts and prayers also go out to the troops from Fort Stewart who are serving so bravely right now, as we speak, in Afghanistan.
President Obama and the First Lady took a solemn stroll down Warriors Walk, a place of reflection lined with 441 Eastern Redbuds to give pause to remember the 3rd ID members who have died in service to our country. And to watch the President's speech in its entirety, just go to WSAV.com.
Savannah's educational community is saying goodbye to a mentor this week. Otis Brock, the Chief Operations Officer for the Savannah-Chatham County School District, passed away suddenly on Tuesday. His cause of death is still unknown. Today, family, friends, and colleagues poured into Adams Funeral Home in Savannah to pay their respects. We caught up with his close friend, Alderman Van Johnson, outside.
I think the most unique thing about him is that he was so well-grounded that no matter where you saw him, he was always the same way all the time. He was a person that was interested in building bridges, and I don't think this community really realized the impact. Otis was a person where if he, he loved you, he showed it.
Brock will be laid to rest tomorrow after funeral services in the Student Union Ballroom at Savannah State University. Services are set to begin at 10 a.m. Friends of Brock's have set up a fund to help with college costs for his 2 children, Zoe and Zori, and his 3rd baby on the way. If you would like to donate, checks can be made payable to the Brock Children Educational Fund and sent to either Carver State Bank or Savannah Bank. The addresses are posted on WSAV.com. Just search Brock.
Well, coming up, it is always exciting when the president comes to town.
But for a few, today's visit was extra special because they got some one-on-one time with President Obama.
And a lot of people put in a lot of hours of preparation for the president's stop. Behind the scenes, we found folks buzzing with anticipation at Fort Stewart.
And if you're ready for the weekend, get ready for it to be rather hot. Your Storm Team 3 forecast is right after the break. You're watching WSAV News 3 on your side at 6.
It's a privilege to hang out with some of America's finest. The dog-faced soldiers of the 3rd Infantry Division. Rock of the Marr. We've got a lot of folks in the house. We've got the Raider Brigade. We've got the Spartan Brigade. We've got the Vanguard Brigade. We've got the Provider Brigade. And we've got the Falcon Brigade.
Well, a group of soldiers got the thrill of meeting the President and First Lady right after they arrived at Hunter Army Airfield.
After a greeting from 3 top Hunter officials and their wives, the Obamas got cheers from a group of 100 soldiers of the 3rd Combat Aviation Brigade. President Obama and the First Lady shook hands and talked to many of them during the quick stop at Hunter. The soldiers say it's an experience they will never forget, and they appreciate the Obamas' support.
I know she's a big advocate for family, military families, so, me being dual military and having children myself, knowing that we have somebody like her and the president advocating for us, it was an honor.
I can't put it in words. I really can't. To meet the president and the First Lady in this type of environment with the military, my brothers and sisters basically standing behind me.
Well, several of the soldiers also had the president sign copies of the Marne Standards. That's a book on how to conduct yourself as a soldier. And the gesture behind the president and First Lady's visit to say thanks to the troops was definitely appreciated.
From thousands of military and their families to some lucky civilians, there was quite a big crowd at Fort Stewart today.
Among them, WSAV's Joanne Merrigan, who joins us now with more.
Yeah, that's right. I was one of the lucky ones. It's not every day the president and First Lady pay a visit to your area. Turned out to be a pretty warm day, but thousands still spent up to 3 hours waiting for the big moment, sending a message that whatever your politics are in this day and age, that when the big guy comes to town, it's still a big deal to be in the audience. For this event, no detail was too small, including last-minute vacuuming of the carpet on the podium. That as thousands of 3rd ID soldiers waited in line.
You don't get to see the president every day, that's for sure.
Staff Sergeant Robert Barhorst, who's been to Iraq 3 times, says accolades from the president are a big thing.
You know, when somebody like that comes and sees you, it makes you feel really appreciated. It's the best gesture you can get as a soldier.
Along with soldiers, there were thousands of military family members and a few lucky civilians, including Sharon Terry, who wouldn't have missed it.
I've had kidney stones all week, but I would not let a kidney stone keep me away from this moment.
Hello, Fort Stewart.
After so much effort just to be here, the big moment arrived. The President and First Lady saluting the many who serve at Fort Stewart and their families.
One of my greatest privileges as First Lady has been meeting folks like you on bases in communities all across this country.
Out of many, we are one.
The first couple taking time to honor what the military has done and is still doing meant a lot, especially to Patrice Williams.
I'm glad that they took the time to come out and speak with the families and the soldiers, so it really means a lot to us.
And are you a family member?
Yes, I am a family member. This is my husband, Lieutenant Williams.
The President and First Lady's visit making an impression on all those here.
And I mean, you know, they're walking through the crowd and they're taking the time to reach out, and I was kind of far back and she looked over and reached out, and it just means a lot. They take the time. Yeah.
The majority of those attending were military members or their spouses. There was still a contingent of civilians, public officials, including the mayor of Hinesville and other area mayors. And then there were those lucky folks who got an invitation from friends or their businesses. That included the lady we just talked to, who was a little under the weather, as you saw, but she told me later she wouldn't have missed it for the world. Joanne Merrigan, WSAV News 3.
News 3 at 6 continues with your Storm Team 3 forecast, powered by live heart rate Titan radar.
All right, moving on to the weather now. Feels a lot like summer out there, Chris.
Oh, it does. 2 days in a row, reaching highs in the lower 90s, and we could do it over the weekend too. So yeah, have some backup plans on ways to stay cool, air conditioning, going to the beach, whatever it takes. Because in your weather headlines, relief will be hard to find for tonight. An isolated shower or thunderstorm will be a possibility, but over the weekend, we look to stay dry and very warm. It's not going to cool down until possibly next week. Now with your fastcast, what we have from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m., just a little bit of cloud cover tonight, partly cloudy skies. At around midnight, we should be down to around 70, and by 6 a.m., again tonight, just as mild as last night, dropping to lows in the mid-60s. On our live high grade Titan radar, most of us are dry tonight and cloud free, but we have a storm system just to our north that could trigger, an isolated shower, maybe an isolated thunder shower, mainly for areas north of I-16. The rest of us, though, will stay dry tonight. Here's the storm system. It's right along a cold front that is producing showers and thunderstorms over parts of northern South Carolina into parts of northern Georgia. Thunderstorms just around the Atlanta area. The cold front is trying to sink to the south, but it's not getting to. High pressure's in control here to the south, and it's preventing any of these rain showers from coming to us. This is what's going to keep us warm, and it's going to keep us dry over the weekend. Tonight, as we drop down to lows in the lower 60s for inland areas and at the coast in the mid 60s, winds will stay out of the southwest around 5 to 10 miles per hour. For tomorrow, we could see a few clouds first thing in the morning. The rest of the day, mostly sunny skies, southwest winds. Highs will top out, lower 80s at the coast, farther inland, all the way up to around 90, possibly even a few 90s could be met. So we have 90 for Waycross, Alma, Baxley, Jessup, you'll see a high of 89, and then Darien reaching a high of 87. If you are headed to Tybee tomorrow, high of 81 degrees with water temperatures upper 60s. 89 for Rincon, Savannah, 87, 90 for Metter and Pembroke, and in the low country just as warm, 88 for Allendale and Hampton, 86 for Bluffton, and then Beaufort you'll top out at 87 degrees. For the marine forecast, visibility all the way at around 10 miles. And again, those water temperatures are running around 67 to 68 degrees. Winds will be out of the south at around 10 to 15 knots with waves forecast at 2 to 3 feet. Your low tide 7:40 in the morning with high tide around 2 in the afternoon. Over the weekend on Sunday, it could be a degree, possibly 2 or 3 degrees warmer than Saturday, but by next week our temperatures will come back down, will cool off a little bit, lower to mid 80s, but as far as a chance of rain, only 10% we're looking at on Thursday and Friday afternoon. So we can't get relief in both ways, unfortunately.
All right.
Important to have a good time this weekend, Chris, but
Yes.
also play it safe in this heat.
Exactly. Drink lots of water. Do what you can.
Okay.
We'll be right back with more highlights from today's presidential visit.
For the gentlemen out there who are not yet married, let me just explain to you, your goal is to improve your gene pool by marrying somebody who is superior to you.
Well, it's not every day that the President of the United States comes to town.
News 3's photojournalist Art Otimo captures the excitement from Hunter to Fort Stewart today.
With that, please join me in welcoming our First Lady and Commander-in-Chief, President Barack Obama.
Hello, Fort Stewart.
Quite a day it was, and you can see the president's entire speech on WSAV.com.
Free on your side at 6.
An emotional day in a Long County courtroom as the men accused of killing a young couple go before a judge and the grieving family of the victims. Grief and anger is spilling over as 3 Fort Stewart soldiers appear in Little Wissy. A family member overwhelmed and soldiers told they're facing the death penalty.
That's all in connection with the double murder of Michael Rourke, a young man who had just left the Army, and his 17-year-old girlfriend, Tiffany York, back in December of 2011. WSAV's Joanne Merrigan was in the court and has a lot more on the drama that's really getting national headlines now.
That's right, Andrew, and that national attention goes back to what the state claims is the motive for the brutal killings, that these soldiers had formed an anti-government militia and killed 2 people to keep it all secret. But today we were painfully reminded that this is not headlines to families who've lost everything. Despair likely set the stage for this scene as a family member lunged at one of the soldiers, a reminder that in a sterile courtroom, facts present little comfort for a family.
They took something from me that's not replaceable.
Nicholas York, whose sister was murdered, told reporters his family came to court because they owed it to their loved one. This is how the day began, with each soldier appearing before the judge. The first, 21-year-old Isaac Agigi,
State of Georgia versus Isaac Agigi,
considered to be the ringleader of a militia group that committed murder because it thought it was going to be betrayed.
The offense of murder of Michael Rourke was committed for the purpose of domestic terrorism. Number 7, the offense of Tiffany York was committed for the purpose of domestic terrorism.
When it came to reasons why the death penalty is being sought, the militia and cover-up was one of them. The second soldier to appear, Christopher Salmon, who reportedly was the one who shot Michael Rourke that night last year. Michael's father, Brett, visibly shaken as the death penalty charges were read against Salmon. But it was the appearance of Sergeant Anthony Payton that produced the drama. Payton, who has received more than a dozen medals and who's gone to Afghanistan, is allegedly the one who shot young Tiffany York twice in the head. Tiffany's stepfather, Wesley Thomas, lunged toward Payton, only to be stopped by law enforcement.
The man's daughter's dead.
We understand that. You're not helping their situation.
One father defending another as Thomas was led from the courtroom.
To be honest with you, I wish Wes would have got a hold of him. I wish I can get a hold of him.
Nicholas York saying his stepdad couldn't take it anymore.
Wes, he just has a lot of anger built up for these 4 individuals. How much, because he's seen what it done to a family. how much stress it put us through. It just tore us all apart. We miss Tiffany tremendously, and she was just a beautiful person. You'd never think Tiffany would get tied up with these type of guys.
When it comes to the reported motive for the killings, York's brother still doesn't know what to think.
I think they're crazy. I don't understand how an E5 and a sergeant and all these high-ranked militaries could listen to a private E1, and how many ways it could have got prevented, and just how it led up to this.
On Monday, a force soldier, Michael Burnett, entered a plea telling the court that he had witnessed Tiffany's murder and that of Michael Rourke, but that he had not participated. Now the death penalty charges have been filed. A long process will begin for defendants and the families of the victims. Nicholas York told us, as far as he knows, his stepfather is not facing any charges because of what happened today. He says Mr. Thomas was allowed to go home after he was able to calm down. Joanne Merrigan, WSAV News 3.
It sits at the corner of Park and Waters, a boarded up eyesore, a building the city of Savannah says it has worked for 7 years to force the owners into compliance. They've tried to condemn it 3 different times, and in January deemed the property unfit for habitation, recommending demolition.
And that's been a sore thumb with the residents of that area for a long, long time.
So what about you as alderman? I mean, can you push for something to be done there?
Yes, I can, and I have.
But nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening. We'll push again, but I have.
Alderwoman Mary Osborne represents the 2nd District and is frustrated. So are city staffers who have tried to work with Jackson for months. Months filled with what some would call delay tactics, and certainly no resolution. Is it frustrating for you that a state senator, I mean, he's kind of thumbing his nose at the city?
Yes, kind of doing that. Or something is going to be done. Something is going to be done. The question is when. The question to me is, when is it going to be done?
Osborne says this property has been an issue since she took office in 2004.
They did do some repairs to the back of the house. But you see, you just drop a little bit in and they'll get off your back. Right. And that's not going to happen.
She's pushing for the matter to go beyond the city staff level. We hear stories of people who just have chip paint on their house or being brought to court by property maintenance.
Right, but
why is Senator Jackson's family not being brought?
We'll work on it. We'll work on it some more. That's all I can promise.
I'm mad as hell.
Larry Brown isn't one to mince words, especially about something he loves as much as the Ogeechee River. So how long has it been since people swam here?
3 years.
3 years? Why don't you swim here anymore?
Well, it's polluted.
You think it's from King America?
Yeah, I know it is.
This stretch of river about 2 miles behind his house used to be a summer gathering spot for his entire family, but he says about 3 years ago, things changed.
Fish had sores on them. The water was discolored, and it had a scent to it.
So when massive amounts of fish turned up dead last year, Brown wasn't surprised. He'd been keeping track of the discharge coming from the company because the discharge pipe is just about 200 yards upstream from his land.
It should be a reddish black.
He says over the years, the color of the water has been slowly changing to a slimy dark green. Brown told me he can always tell the days that the company is dumping because he says the water 200 yards down at his landing turns even darker.
I mean, God built this river, and we should protect it.
Brown and Ogeechee Riverkeeper Diana Wedenkamp don't believe things have gotten much better in the last year.
We had recent samples that came back in really high in formaldehyde, high in ammonia.
Wedenkamp says many here have lost confidence that the EPD is able or willing to provide stricter enforcement on pollution.
I would rather that permit be very carefully analyzed by more than just EPD, because now we see EPD does not know what's good for our river.
Do you think that King America was punished?
No.
They're paying $1 million.
They ain't paid it yet.
Brown says he's still waiting for the fish to come back, still waiting for the water to look and smell the way it used to, still waiting for justice.
I went to Vietnam because my country sent me to Vietnam and put my life on the line and come back here and can't even enjoy a piece of property that I own and pay tax on the account of pollution. We don't want to see anybody lose their job. What we're after is for King to clean up the mess that they have made and keep it clean.
Last night we opened up our phone lines and let your voices be heard. We held a phone bank and allowed viewers to call in their ideas. There was a big response. We got dozens of calls with a variety of concerns from safety to roads and other topics. One viewer called us about a traffic problem in his neighborhood. We sent News 3's Tukwin Mock to check it out on Savannah's south side. Tukwin, what's the concern here?
Well, Russ, this viewer called us because he's afraid someone's really going to get hurt if something's not done about this. Now, Gene Simpson has lived in the Kensington Park neighborhood for decades. He's seen a lot of changes there over the years.
A potentially bad situation ends peacefully in Savannah. Now, 2 suspects are behind bars in a bizarre kidnapping hostage case.
A frightening sight for anyone to see. Sharon Dixon was at work when a co-worker told her to turn on the television news.
My kids, I can see it. My baby, the little one, she had her hands up and she was on the floor, and and they had guns pointed to them. And I'm like, well, what's going on?
Police thought they had the suspect in an armed robbery and kidnapping cornered in this house. They weren't taking any chances either, bringing in the SWAT team, a bomb robot, and snipers armed with high-powered rifles.
It starts with a simple question, but after just a few minutes, Eric Scholl is in cuffs, under arrest, accused of downloading child pornography. Investigators say he had dozens of images and video and was searching for even more, even younger. Tracking images and offenders, just part of the job of ICAC, or the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. The other is in chat rooms across the World Wide Web.
I'll start with, you got any bikini pictures, beach pictures, and then it'll kind of move into, what can you take some naked pictures and send to me?
Many times, those internet predators are sending pictures to this man, Joe Heath, an Effingham County Sheriff's deputy and member of the ICAC task force who spends hours a day logged in and letting potential offenders come to him.
Kind of like fishing for me. So,
in what way?
Throw the bait out there and just kind of let them pull on it until you're ready to reel them in, and then just kind of see what happens.
How often from those profiles do you get hits from people who are, say, questionable?
In an hour's period of time, dozens and dozens and dozens of people. It's not very hard to have 25, 30 conversations going at one time. And it's all people who are just interested in that and kind of leading you down that road.
Conversations that may start innocently enough but quickly turn sexual and potentially illegal.
A lot of the times 12's too young, even 13's kind of tough, but you seem to get very busy when you hit that 14 mark.
Joe, posing as a teenage girl or boy, will get a message and make sure each and every person knows how old he is. While some do the right thing and leave immediately, others don't seem to mind. Keep asking questions, searching for pictures, or even going live on the web.
They're more than happy to get nude and get on a webcam. If they're willing to do it on a webcam to what they believe is a child, to me, in my mind, they're just building up their courage to actually do it in person, to do it, face to face.
And a face-to-face meeting is exactly what a lot of these web browsers want and will go anywhere to get it.
I've had them come as far as from Kingsland, Myrtle Beach. I mean, they've come from all over.
And their goal seems to be?
Sex with a child. However long it takes them to build up enough courage or to get comfortable with the idea of it, some of them it may be an hour, some of them I've had could be as long as 2 years.
Police say it only took 3 hours for Michael Rosales to get comfortable enough to drive from his Brunswick home for a meeting with who he thought was going to be a 15-year-old.
He was saying that he had a stepchild of his own and that he found the thought of her very exciting, and he found this as an outlet to act upon that.
Instead, all he found were several Effingham County deputies waiting with handcuffs and a trip to jail.
I go by Joe's office every now and then, and I tell you some of the stuff that I see and hear and read that comes across that computer, and these people think they're talking to children. It almost makes you sick on your stomach to think about it.
Effingham County Sheriff Jimmy McDuffie is proud of the arrests Heath has made, and prouder still of what Effingham's role in the ICAC task force could play in pulling even more sexual deviants off the streets.
our detective can package the paperwork together, ship it to Indiana. Indiana can make the arrest and prosecute off the paperwork from what our detectives here have done.
That detective work led Heath to this home in Savannah just a few nights ago. The yard littered with signs of the season and toys. Inside, the man was allegedly downloading child pornography. After a few minutes of investigation and conversation, out comes 23-year-old Christopher Hadel. He apparently had dozens of underage and illegal pictures on his computer, but when I confronted him, he didn't have much of a defense. And that's exactly where Hadel was taken, the first arrest of this night, but he says he won't be the last.
You think you're anonymous, but you're really not. It's just a matter of time we'll knock on the door.
If you want to hear the truth behind a lie,
my date of birth, you see, date and place of birth.
then listen to Lloyd Harrell talk about the greatest fib he ever told.
She didn't want to do it because she said that would be lying. I said, well, I'll do the lying. You just sign.
1926 to 1925. It's the change of a birth year he made and convinced his mother to sign off on, because at just 16 years old, he wanted to fight for America.
The reason I did this was because our country was at war.
A 16 going on 17 Lloyd Harrell found himself joining the Navy. On his 17th birthday, he was 10,500 feet in the air as a passenger in practice flights.
We were up here. We went down like this. Holly, I'm telling you, my stomach was in here.
It was then he prepared for the memories he'd make at 18 that many never lived to tell.
The fight went on. But to look over there and see these people on the beach, nobody could get to them. They were half covered with the sand. Holly, burning flesh. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible time.
In a sense, Harold got his $100, train ride home, and discharge papers, and walked away from the war. But on our recent visit to Washington, D.C., particularly the Iwo Jima Memorial,
It's amazing that people remember.
It was evident he did not leave it all behind.
I was in a my action station, general quarter station. I was on a 40 millimeter anti-aircraft gun, and we had 5 on the ship, and I was on the starboard rear, and my position I controlled with like this, the gun barrel going up and down, and I had the firing pin under my right foot, and believe it or not, during all of the fighting, I never ever had to fire my gun in anger.
When it all ended, Harold chose to disconnect best he could, never joining a vets group, only attending one reunion with his comrades. But this 12-hour trip, friends twisted his arm to go on.
It's a very emotional day.
Came at him like a revival, reminding him of the truth within the journey he started with a little white lie.
This is mind-boggling for a 16, almost 17-year-old kid, you know.
An honest feeling of faith he made out there that no matter what comes our way, he'll forever carry in his heart.
We are under attack in this country. And while I fear for our country, it's like a moving tide. It's going to take time to shove it back, but shove it back we will.
Storm Team 3 Chief Meteorologist Chris Allred is watching the weather closely tonight. Chris?
We're going to zoom into where the strongest storms are happening right now, and this is over parts of Bullock and Candler counties. Torrential rainfall, some lightning strikes, also the possibility of gusty, damaging winds up to around 50 miles per hour, and small hail could definitely be a possibility within these storms. In the last 15 minutes, we've had about 26 strikes of lightning, and that's a good number because it's coming down. So we're starting to see stability return. All of these storms are pushing off to the west at about 15 miles per hour in this case, moving toward Pulaski, Sylvania, Metter, and about 42 minutes and about an hour, Millhaven, you could see some showers and thunderstorms too.
Storms and then damage reports started rolling in. Around 4:45 on Burbank Boulevard, a massive tree fell on a family's home, damaging it and the car that was in the driveway. Another tree had also fallen in the yard across the street. Not far away on Wilshire Boulevard, we found a massive tree had toppled over like a domino and right onto Frida Morgan's home.
I heard the wind, and I looked, and I thought they were going to blow the tray, the chairs into my picture window. And then about that time, I saw that tree coming down.
Though there's a lot to clean up, she's thankful no one was hurt.
I thought, well, it was coming through on me, but it didn't. But I do have a limb that's sticking through the ceiling in the living room.
Can you imagine losing the ability to do all the normal things like take care of yourself, walk, and ride a bicycle? Diabetes can rob you of those natural gifts we all take for granted. Marked by high levels of sugar, diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death in America. Now, according to the American Diabetes Association, 26 million adults and children in the U.S. are living with diabetes. 7 million of those are undiagnosed. Well, diabetes can even suck the life out of you, one limb at a time. In tonight's special health report, a Savannah man is living proof you have to fight the disease head on.
Here's a good one, right there. That's you and your whole family and going fishing.
Paul McKinney was doing all the enjoyable things that life offered him 16 years ago until a heartbreaking change to his body. Diagnosed with diabetes in 1996, he vowed to fight the disease.
Well, I really attacked it really hard. Did what the doctor said, lost a bunch of weight. Everything was going great. So I didn't think I needed the medicine anymore or anything. And 2008, I started losing parts of my body.
The first scare came after a shower.
I looked at my foot and the calluses had broke open.
A doctor's appointment days later resulted in the unimaginable.
My 2 middle toes on my right foot were solid black. And so I went into the hospital and they cut the first toe and the bone behind it off. Well, you would have thought that woke me up, but I tried to do better.
The sad truth is, Paul failed to manage his diabetes.
I could have watched what I ate more. The hamburgers and being in the restaurant business, grabbing food when you are hungry and eating instead of watching what you eat. I could have controlled my diabetes better.
2 more surgeries took the front half of his right foot. Then, in 2009, during an operation, Paul was not prepared for these words.
My surgeon walked in and said, "We're going to take your leg." And that was hard.
The scary reality for Paul, how would he ever walk again? Filled with pain, Paul was later fitted with a prosthetic left leg. The new season in his life would require round-the-clock support. Paul's wife, Coral, is his strength. She does what Paul cannot do for himself.
She could have left me at any time during this process she wanted to. I don't think I could. Well, I'd have never made it through without her.
Paul acknowledges that his situation could have been avoided if he had kept his blood sugar levels under control. His warning to all diabetics, take care of yourself.
The doctors, the nurses, anybody can tell you what they want to tell you. But if you don't take care of yourself and you don't take control, this is what you've got to look forward to.
Through it all, Paul has experienced some happy moments.
And the first time I got back in the truck to drive was unbelievable. First steps, I took him into a lake. was like being born again.
His road to recovery has been a challenge and required sacrifice, but through the obstacles, he's learned to keep a positive attitude. After all, he has so much to be thankful for.
To still be alive is a great thing. If I could go back and do things differently, God, yes, I would.
They paint over it. It's like the more you stay there and then more wear and tear, you start seeing more, and then I started to smell it out of my vent.
Kalicia Gardner and Sade Stevens have been worried for months about mold and say their children have been getting sick.
He was just burning up, so I just immediately took him straight to the emergency room.
Last Friday, Gardner says her 1-year-old turned up with a viral infection. The day we met, she told me her 6-year-old son had been sick that morning.
And I'm afraid that it can be damaging my kids' health also.
Both women say they've complained to the apartment manager to no avail.
We've asked for numbers to call people over her, left messages. It's the same thing. I mean, we get frustrated because no one's returning your phone calls.
A lot of the pictures did look pretty disgusting.
And that black stuff back there doesn't look good.
Yes, ma'am, it's mold.
Well, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, the real thing may be worth more.
Does somebody really know that that's what it looks like underneath your sand?
Yes, ma'am.
They know what
Yes,
it looks
ma'am.
like.
How long has it been like that?
For like 2 years.
There was also nasty stuff on vents throughout her apartment and in the bathroom. Also in the bathroom, the sound of running water.
They've been going on for like a month.
She can't turn it off in the bathtub.
How do you turn that off?
It runs repeatedly. I can't turn it off. I have no control over it.
And that looks like either mold or mildew. It's kind of hard to tell.
We showed our video to Roger Von Duke, who runs a company that deals in mold remediation.
The stuff under the sink is pretty serious. Industrial hygienists can run a test and determine what it is. You know, a lot of mold is never a good thing, and there was a lot of mold in there. It shows me that there's a water source that needs to be addressed.
We also went to several other apartments where we found what appeared to be mold on vents, window seals, and water leaks in the ceiling. In another unit, no faucet at all in the bathtub, just a pipe coming out of the wall and the water running continuously here as well. In Gardner's bathroom, there was black, nasty stuff on the floor and what looked like mold on the windows of her children's room.
Do you think it's dangerous? It's just hard to say.
To certain people, it's extremely dangerous. It's not the type of mold so much as it is the person and their sensitivities.
And remember Gardner's 6-year-old who'd been sick that morning? By afternoon, she'd received this doctor's slip that said his illness was related to mold exposure.
You are concerned about retaliation or no?
I am.
Really?
Yes, I am. And that's why a lot of people are scared to speak up and say anything because they're scared that they're going to be evicted. But I'm more scared of my kids being sick than me being evicted.
Hello, Fort Stewart.
Thousands of soldiers, veterans, and their families witnessed President Obama sign executive orders today that aims to give service members, past and present, a no-hassle path to higher education. Good evening. I'm Tina Tice-Shaw.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight. Well, the higher education is the clearest path to the middle class. The president's words today as he addressed soldiers at Fort Stewart. Well, the president says the executive order will protect veterans and current service members from misleading and deceptive recruiting programs by some for-profit colleges. He says some of the schools aggressively target military members for the GI Bill money, and it seems to be working. History did some digging, and we found that for-profit schools received 37% of GI Bill money in the 2009-2010 school years. However, only educated 25% of veterans. On the flip side, public colleges enrolled 59% of veterans, but that only accounted for 40% of government money.
I like being involved in my community.
As a former Marine, it was important for Joshua Holmes to have a sense of camaraderie when continuing his education, but he was having a hard time finding the resources he needed.
I didn't know where the VA was. I had to go find it and figure out where the American Legion or the VFW was, things that all veterans should know. I had to find out all on my own, and now that's things that we can do for veterans when they come here as a new student.
So when he received an email from the university's dean wanting to start an SVA chapter, he was all in. They had their first meeting in October of 2011.
I don't know anybody in Savannah. Having somebody around that knows the information that I learned all on my own to give me that information here on campus would have been great.
Student Veterans of America's Executive Director Michael Dakduke says that's the whole point, but some schools are doing it all wrong. A review of the contact information raised some red flags.
The concern is if a student veteran that's transitioning from Afghanistan, hoping to connect with a fellow veteran on a specific college campus, but instead connects with the director of admissions or recruiting officer at a school, then it makes it appear that we are working with or approving certain academic programs.
Dakduke says some schools are trying to make big bucks on our veterans and using SVA as a tool to bring them in.
It is no secret that the post-9/11 GI Bill is a very lucrative benefit, and colleges and universities are competing for military veterans to get them to the halls of their college campus, and they're competing for those dollars as well.
While they might have had their charter revoked, he says they'll continue the mission of SVA, veterans serving veterans.
Until we get it fixed, we're still going to do it.
In 2012, things have changed when it comes to what we know about heat and humidity. Last week, when 7 schools took part in this scrimmage in Savannah, Derek Fitzgerald watched with interest. His son Nick is a junior at Richmond Hill.
You see the effects every day with dehydration on the field and kids just really struggling with the heat.
Fitzgerald played football himself in high school and is now involved in his son's team. He thinks the new heat policy is a good idea.
You make some kind of adjustment with the practice times based on the heat so that we keep the kids safe. You're protecting your players and you're protecting, in this case, I'm protecting my own child as well.
So what's different this year? For one thing, the acclimation period. For the first 5 days, which start Wednesday, practice can only be 2 hours long each day, and players are supposed to just wear shorts, t-shirts, and a helmet. After the first week, they can put on uniforms and pads and practice longer, but never more than 5 hours a day with a 3-hour break in between.
So in a 14-day period of time, we feel as if we can acclimate your body to be able to handle the heat better than what we've done before.
Earl Etheridge is athletic director for the city of Savannah and also heads the football committee for the Georgia High School Association.
We listened to the pros and cons of what we could do to help our young people play in football so that we could get rid of the stigma that we lead the nation in deaths in the state of Georgia since 1995.
So when the temperature starts to climb, Etheridge says coaches will need to pay attention.
And that means we might be taking shoulder pads and off. But the big thing is that you have a cooling off place where the sun's not directly on you.
A cooling off station with not only water but an ice tub and other things like cold towels is now standard procedure.
It's measuring the temperature of the air, the humidity, and the effect of the sun. 82 and below, there's no restrictions.
Another thing that's also standard procedure, trainers must use a wet bulb globe thermometer several times during practice.
You hear about the heat index on the radio or on the TV. That's how a person feels normally dressed, not doing any activity. Okay. This is more specific for our athletes and our athletic population as they're running around. They're going to be producing more heat, be affected more by the heat.
Several area coaches say they favor protecting athletes, but they are trying to figure out all the new rules.
But also, let me say, it's for a good cause. There's nothing wrong with that.
Statesboro High School football coach Steve Pennington says he still has questions. It does say it's hotter now, right?
It does, because we've been standing in the sun. So that's something that we are monitoring.
The rules say a wet globe temperature over 87 means limiting practice to 2 hours.
And one of those issues is the fluctuation of the wet bulb globe temperature. What it is, when it comes down, when you can go out, what's your time limited, and so it really puts a strain in the organization and the practice scheduling time. But I know at Statesboro we're going to find a way, and we're going to do it right, but we're going to find a way.
But it's not about just a game we play, it's about how can they play the game and yet be as safe as it possibly can be.
Etheridge says the High School Association did think long and hard about the rules. He expects most schools will follow them, but says there are repercussions if they don't.
There is a $500 to $1,000 fine to the school that does not follow it because it's imported that we reduce the number of people going down with heat stroke.
And for each name engraved by the stonecutter's knife, there are hundreds of people touched by that life.
And whereas police officers unselfishly sacrifice their own safety to ensure that the life and well-being of another citizen is secured.
Everyone will see the Lord's splendor, see his greatness and power. Give strength to hands that are tired and to knees that tremble with weakness. Tell everyone who is discouraged, be strong and do not be afraid. God is coming to our rescue.
To think, when we all shed a tear, for all of the heroes whose names grace the wall, and for all of those heroes who still answer the call. Family and friends at the wall they will stand, with pictures, letters, and love in their hands. Left at the wall will be displays of their love, a tribute to those who now watch from above. They will think of the day their world was destroyed, a split second in time, causing such a great void. As they visit the wall, there's great pain in their heart, but strangely it's there, that the healing can start.
May their memory stand forever as one who went down brave.
You know, I'm a movie buff,
okay.
And so I know we went to the movies and we hung out at the mall.
Robert Berry is recalling the last time he saw his daughter, Ashley Moore.
And then this one, I think that might have been the last picture that she took, and that was her hanging out with her friends.
Berry says he thinks about her every day, especially as what would have been her 22nd birthday approaches.
Because now she's at the age where we would have been in college. Soon she'd have been walking down the aisle.
Instead of 10 years of memories, Ashley's family has spent 10 years seeking justice. Because on April 18th of 2003, Ashley went missing.
And we know that Ashley wouldn't run away from the people that love her.
For 3 weeks, a community came together to search and pray for Ashley's safe return.
And it just seemed like a bad dream. And I thought that she would walk around that corner any moment. I was praying and hoping.
On May 14th, her body was found near the Savannah Marriott riverfront. At the time, police said they had suspects but wouldn't elaborate. 4 years later, when they charged Ashley's mother's live-in boyfriend, Bobby Buckner, with Ashley's abduction and murder, Berry was floored.
This guy helped making missing posters. And that just, you have to be pierce of evil to do that, I think.
A registered sex offender, Buckner had been living under the same roof with Berry's daughter for years.
The guilt, like I said, I wasn't there to protect her. That haunts me. As a dad, as a man, that bothers me. And I've taken a stance that it'll never happen ever again. But more importantly, we're going to fix this and get her justice.
Last week, the charges against Buckner were dismissed. 7 years since he was charged, a judge ruled his right to a speedy trial had been violated.
We've been victimized twice. Once by a murder and by a failing judicial system.
In a 36-page order, the judge faulted several things, including the handling of the case by Assistant District Attorney David Perry.
This is not a jaywalking case. Why wasn't somebody brought up to speed? Why wasn't there just Mr. Perry sitting there by himself and just totally above his neck above water?
Berry's sister recently met with Perry. Berry says the DA offered no apology, but discussed plans to appeal the judge's ruling.
But we're here to say that we're watching every move. The appeal is just the beginning. We know this is a long road, and it may not even be, we may not hear some things that we want to hear, but it's, you gotta at least attempt. And for it to just be dismissed and not be heard is just the worst.
Why do we have to have auto insurance?
Tammy and Anthony Wyrith have decided when it comes to Allstate, maybe they're not in such good hands after all. Did you want to keep your home with them?
Yes, ma'am. I always wanted to keep my home with them. When I got the letter stating that, they were going to no longer renew my policy, I called them up, asked them what I could do to stay with them.
It started in December with a letter from Allstate saying it would not renew the couple's homeowners insurance at the end of January, even though they'd had the policy for 7 years.
What had happened was an actual lightning struck a tree in my backyard, which busted one of the branches off and went through one of my sheds in the backyard.
In an effort to keep his coverage, Wyrith spent $2,000 out of his pocket to cut the tree and repair the roof in the shed. But he did wonder how Allstate knew what had happened way back here, away from his house. He was told they'd sent out an inspector.
That they came in my backyard, they opened my gate and walked in my backyard to actually take pictures and to find a problem with my home so that they could deny me insurance.
Okay, so he's a little irritated at this point, but he fixes the shed and assumes this means he can keep his homeowner's policy. Then he hears from his agent.
Called me back about an hour later and said the underwriters just called back and stated they would not reinsure my home without my auto insurance.
By now, Tammy is mad and she saves the voicemail from the agent.
Sent Thursday, January 19th.
The agent has checked with higher-ups at Allstate and tells Tammy, quote, they're saying they do require the auto insurance for customers in your situation that they canceled because all of a sudden you're treated like a new customer.
This is not a new policy. This is the same policy. I don't have to have that. But now they're trying to strong-arm us into making us buy auto insurance.
I just didn't understand the whole situation at all. I kept trying to get answers. We even basically asked for it if we could have it in writing, and they wouldn't even give it to us in writing.
The Wyriths have 3 vehicles, so their auto insurance would have been a decent amount of money, but they wanted to keep one company for auto and keep Allstate for home.
Because they say that they're millions of dollars in debt on the coastal empire area, or in the coastal area. So they're actually telling me they won't insure anybody without auto insurance now.
The Wyriths have found out that other customers have complained about Allstate. They feel the company basically dug up a reason to try to drop them so it could eventually try to require them to buy auto insurance. But in the end, these are not customers that the company would want to do a commercial. That's for sure.
Don't blackmail me. If you're going to insure me, insure me. If you're going to blackmail me, I don't need you, and nobody needs you. Allstate shouldn't even be in business any longer if this is what they're going to do.